to drug. Good evening, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. It's day 2 of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, and the prosecution's star witness, his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, taking the stand. The disturbing video of Diddy and Cassie in an LA hotel hallway, one of the sparks that really ignited this case. Today, for the first time in 6 years, Cassie coming face to face with Diddy, telling the jury in graphic detail about what they say is the darker side of the rap mogul over the span of their 10-year relationship. Cassie admitting she was young and initially wanted to make him happy by fulfilling his sexual desires, but quickly became reluctant. Ventura says the freak-offs took up so much of her time, it felt like a full-time job. When she didn't cater to Combs' desires, he became violent and abusive, bashing and stomping her head at times. In the courtroom, hearing the explicit details of these sexual escapades, Combs' mother and children back for a second day in a row. Prosecutors argue Combs used power and fame to lead a criminal enterprise for 2 decades to allegedly abuse, threaten, and force women into drug-fueled sex marathons that lasted for days. He strongly denies all of these allegations. If convicted, Combs could face life in prison, a stark contrast to the life of luxury he's known for. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges. We'll take you inside the courtroom in just a moment for the emotional testimony, and we'll also take a closer look at Cassie Ventura, the singer and now star witness on the stand. Let's go to Aaron Katersky. He was inside the courtroom for all of it, and he joins me now from Lower Manhattan. Aaron, this was the first time that Cassie Ventura and her ex, Sean Combs, have seen each other since 2018. What was that moment like in the courtroom?
When she walked into the room, Sean Combs appeared to look at her, but she, Eva, did not seem to look at him. And during her testimony, I'm not sure she really made eye contact with Sean Combs. She turned occasionally to her husband, Alex Fine, who was seated in the courtroom. She had other members of her family, her attorney there in support, but she recounted such graphic detail, too graphic for us to discuss here now, in such soft-spoken, matter-of-fact tones, describing degrading sexual activity that she said Sean Combs forced her into, starting when she was 22 years old, and as she called herself, naive, too naive, she said, to really understand what was going on or understand the power dynamics in the relationship. Because she said, if it turned him on, that's what they did. Her preferences weren't at all considered. And she said she was passed around and objectified by men, and with other men she didn't want to be having sex with, on Sean Combs's whim, describing how he wanted to set up recording equipment to record these freak-offs. She said it made me feel insane. She said it was humiliating and disgusting.
Aaron, Cassie shared that she didn't have a whole lot of sexual experience before she met Diddy. She was only 19 when she met them. There's a nearly 2 decades age difference between these two. Talk more about that power dynamic and how their relationship changed over time.
Well, she was 19 and a young singer, and Combs signed her to a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Records, so a long-term deal, and she said, Eva, that she only made 1 album. Otherwise, the freak-offs took up so much of her time that it stifled her music career, but it controlled her financially, she said. So she felt like her livelihood, her career, her life really depended on Sean Combs and keeping him happy. Otherwise, she said she feared what might happen. Now, interestingly, she talked a lot about not wanting him to break up with her. Now, whether that was because she thought he might get violent or because she would lose some of the life that she had acquired, she didn't really say. But we know that the defense is expected to argue that, sure, Sean Combs and Cassie had a toxic, violent relationship, but the defense has called her a strong, adult woman who made a voluntary choice.
Aaron, you were in that courtroom. These details were a lot. What was the jury's reaction hearing her testimony?
It's really hard to read the jury. Most of them are pretty stone-faced. There was one woman who did seem to be following along. She would occasionally smirk at the mention of baby oil or lubricant, which was used so frequently that, as Ventura described it, the hotel rooms where these freak-offs occurred were left in complete disarray. There was candle wax and oil everywhere. But most of the jurors sat stone-faced, listening to what amounts to the humiliating recollection of a decade's worth of a woman's sex life.
Aaron, what can we expect to see in court tomorrow?
More of the same. Cassie Ventura ended her testimony today, taking jurors to a moment they've already seen video of, what happened in the Los Angeles hotel in March of 2016. The jury had already seen the video, but they saw it again with Cassie narrating it, saying, "That's me," pointing to herself on video and telling the jury this was the first and only time she tried to escape a freak-off before Sean Combs declared it over. She said she got hit by Combs, she had a black eye, and she wanted to leave, but when she tried to, as the jury saw in video, he dragged her back.
Aaron Katersky for us there at the courthouse. Aaron, thank you so much. And let's break all of this testimony down and what it means for this case with ABC News legal contributor and trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer. You were also in the courtroom. This testimony, the details of this testimony, from a legal standpoint, what stood out to you?
So from a legal standpoint, there are a few quotes that I want to look at that I think kind of run the gambit of what we're talking about here. We have Cassie Ventura here, and some of her quotes saying here, after the freak off, the room was pretty bad off. The candle wax, the all over the place. And then she described it as having a pungent smell. And she brought us into those rooms in a way that made us think no one wants to be in there. The only way you can be in there is to be compelled. I think that fed into the government's argument of coercion. But we also heard something that I think the defense is going to jump on, where she talked about that she was insanely jealous. And we remember from Tenny Garagos, she said that this case was about love, infidelity, jealousy, and money. And so I think something like this, Sean Combs professing to be a man of many women and Cassie potentially being jealous and maybe starting some of those fights or participating in the fights, that's something the defense is going to jump on. And then, of course, this, saying that she's super young and naive, people pleaser, getting her personality. I think her testimony really drove home the idea that this was a horrible interaction, that it was a toxic relationship, as Aaron is quoting the defense. But also, I think there's something that both sides will be able to use from her testimony, that she was trafficked, as the government is arguing, but also that this could just be a domestic violence case where the defense might be able to argue not these crimes, other crimes he's guilty of, maybe not guilty of trafficking and racketeering.
She also talked at some length about the control that he had over her and the other people on his staff that helped participate in that. Why do you think that was so important?
All right, so I think the smart thing to do, start off is talking about Cassie's age. She's 38 years old now. Sean Combs is 55. The age gap was one thing they touched on. The fact that she was his singer and signed onto his label as a singer, and she had done some modeling in the past, and that he had the ability to control whether or not her music got out. We also saw the testimony about who was in his inner circle. We saw her talk about bodyguards and chief of staff. And to Aaron's point, she was very matter-of-fact and soft-spoken when she spoke, but what I saw when she talked about those bodyguards and saw pictures of them, it is almost like she started to tremble in her voice a little. You can see a sense of fear as she recounted who the people were, where if she didn't pick up the phone right away, someone would come and find her. And I think that really colored the idea of this criminal enterprise.
Again, you were in the courtroom today. What was the jury's reaction hearing all of this?
I think as they continue to watch, you saw some people feverishly taking notes in the back, but I think as the testimony continued in, everyone was really leaning in, listening. They were somewhat stoic. I didn't see anyone really jaw-dropping about some of these allegations. Of course, you saw some people, as we see in the reports, shaking their head as to some of these statements because they were very, very horrible and hard to listen to at times.
At the very beginning of the day,